need you to do Zoom. It's not giving me permission to record on Zoom.
Okay, I'll hit record.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good morning. I am Kenyon McDuffie, council member for Ward 5 and chair of the council's committee on business and economic development. Today is Wednesday, October 20th, 2021, and we're convening this meeting virtually via Zoom. The time is 10:37 a.m. and I'm calling to order this additional meeting of the committee. For the record, I'd like to note that we have a quorum, which consists of myself and council members from Ward 3, Mary Che, and Ward 6, Charles Allen. Today, the committee will consider the following measures: Bill 24-155, the B.B. French School Disposition Act of 2021, and Bill 24-294, the Wilkinson School Disposition Authorization Act of 2021. Bill 24-155 was introduced on March 16th, 2021 by Chairman Mendelson at the request of the mayor. As introduced, the bill will declare the property commonly known as B.B. French School located at 545 7th Street Southeast in Ward 6 as surplus, meaning no longer needed for public purposes. The bill would also authorize the DC Department of General Services to enter into a 20-year lease agreement with the Capitol Hill Arts Workshop, or CHAW. This legislation is similar to a measure introduced by Councilmember Allen last council period. After receipt of community feedback and further negotiations between DGS and CHAW, Chairman Mendelson introduced the bill before us, which was referred to both this committee and the Committee on Government Operations and Facilities. The committees held a joint hearing on this measure on Wednesday, May 26th, where we heard strong support for the legislation. The Council's Office on Racial Equity also reported favorably on the measure by stating that it has the potential to advance racial equity in the district. The B.B. French School was last used as a public school around 1942 and has been used as an arts center and occupied by CHAW since 1980. In the last 40 years, CHAW has made significant improvements to the property and has offered arts programming and education and studio space to district residents regardless of their ability to pay. In its testimony, CHAW highlighted the racial equity focus of its programming in addition to its partnerships with Black-led community organizations here in the district. I recognize the significance of a long-term lease will have on CHAW's ability to continue its community-based arts programming without interruption. Because of this, I'm pleased to move this measure forward and look forward to following CHAW's growth as an organization continues to cultivate the arts community in the district. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Allen.
Thank you, Chairman McDuffie. I just want to briefly speak to this, and let me first start with a thank you to your staff for moving this forward today. It's been almost 50 years actually since CHAW was created, and it's served more than 9,000 young people, adult students and artists and patrons each year. Their mission is to discover individual potential while learning and teaching, supporting the notion that arts creates a common ground accessible to all. And I think it's evidenced by their hard work, especially in the pandemic. This last year and a half, they quickly converted their model so they continue serving the community. CHAW opened their building, the Ward 6 Mutual Aid Network, a volunteer collective supporting DC's Black and Brown communities hit hardest by COVID-19. They've coordinated efforts among grassroots leaders and community-based Black and Brown-led organizations to deliver critical supplies and services in the neighborhood where they're based. The building's been used as a food collection hub, serving 2,000 neighbors per week. That's on top of all of the amazing arts that they provide throughout the community. And they've used that partnership to distribute art kits and books to children that are living in shelters and public housing, along with designing and distributing health-related information brochures. Just a few examples of CHAW's long and dedicated service to the community and their ability to pivot in hard times. Since becoming council member, I've really worked hard to try to get us to this space today. And Mr. McDuffie, I'm really grateful that we are taking this vote today and that it'll come before the full council, because CHAW has been there for a long time, as you noted, since 1980. So it's been 41 years. They've never had a long-term lease. And that has greatly impacted their ability to make capital improvements, their ability to have the long-term strategic and planning goals that they need. This is going to help make sure that we see CHAW here for the long run, as if 41 years wasn't long already, but really gives them the certainty to be able to make the continued investments in the building to make sure that they're here to be able to help serve. And so I'm excited about this vote. I appreciate the work that went into it to get it here today, and encourage all my colleagues to support this. And I'm excited for a great new day for CHAW. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Allen. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I move the draft committee report in print with leave for staff to make technical and conforming changes. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously and the measure is approved. Second, we're going to consider Bill 24-294, the Wilkinson School Disposition Authorization Act of 2021. This measure was introduced on June 7th, 2021 by Chairman Mendelson at the request of the mayor, and on June 15th, 2021, referred to both the Committee on Government Operations and Facilities and the Committee on Business and Economic Development. The bill would declare the district-owned property located at 2330 Pomeroy Road, Southeast in Ward 8, commonly known as the Wilkerson School Building, as surplus or no longer needed for public purposes. The legislation authorizes the mayor to dispose of the property at DC Preparatory Academy, a District of Columbia nonprofit charter school pursuant to a 25-year lease with the option for a 25-year extension. Notably, DC Prep's network of charter schools has committed to serving underserved communities and has had a successful track record thus far. The charter school provider serves more than 2,100 pre-K 3 through 8th grade students in its wards 5, 7, and 8 campuses. According to his testimony, DC Prep has tried hard to establish a permanent home for its Anacostia campus since it opened in 2015. It has quickly outgrown its current location. When this bill was introduced, the mayor proposed relocating DC Prep to Wilkerson Elementary School after plans for the building in the Fort Stanton neighborhood fell through. Wilkinson was last used as a public school in 2009 and has served as a temporary location for the Department of Employment Services, DC Infrastructure Academy since 2018. It was the executive's plans to relocate the Infrastructure Academy to Spingarn High School in Ward 5 by 2024. At the public hearing held on July 12th, I and other members of the council raised concerns about the executive's plans to relocate the DC Infrastructure Academy from Ward 8 and far from residents who currently attend classes at the academy. Although members of the council hold DC Prep in high esteem, and even though witnesses overwhelmingly testified in support of the bill, the fact that the Infrastructure Academy will be moved entirely across the city did not rest well with many, including Ward 8 Councilmember Trayon White. For that reason, I and others urged the executive to refine its plan in consultation with Ward 8 Councilmember Trayon White. While the racial impact assessment released by the council's Office on Racial Equity also raised concerns about the relocation of the Infrastructure Academy, many of these concerns have been abated by the efforts in support of Ward 8 Councilmember Trayon White. To be clear, the RIA did conclude that Bill 24-294 will likely improve educational outcomes for the Black residents, Indigenous residents, and other residents of color who attend DC Prep and Anacostia Middle Campus. However, it also stated that it would reinforce the structures of racially segregated schools, in addition to reinforcing some of the past and present practice of excluding Black residents from policymaking. They talked about a number of other concerns that are extraordinarily serious, given how critical education is to the advancement of individuals in our society. And I want to thank the Council's Office on Racial Equity for their thoughtful analysis here. The Committee on Government Operations and Facilities last week met to consider and vote on this measure. At the meeting, Councilmember Trayon White noted his enthusiastic support for the measure as a result of a compromise that he brokered with the executive to keep a good portion of the Infrastructure Academy located in Ward 8. Specifically, the Ward 8 based portion of the academy will be relocated to Reunion Square in both the short and long terms. Needless to say, this is good news as this change benefits Ward 8 residents who rely on the Infrastructure Academy and Ward 8 parents and students who overwhelmingly support DC Prep. As I noted previously, I want to note again that while Ward 5 would look forward to hosting the Infrastructure Academy, we weren't willing to do it at the expense of residents of Ward 8 and those located close to that site. And so we're pleased that Councilmember Trayon White and the executive were able to work out this compromise. The measure was, as a result, voted out of the Committee on Government Operations and Facilities last week. In summary, adoption of this bill would make permanent the disposition of this property, which the council previously approved on both an emergency and temporary basis, This measure would also allow DC Prep to move forward with its plans to house its Anacostia Middle School campus at the Wilkerson School long term. Is there any discussion? Councilman Rowley.
Thanks, Chairman McDuffie. I appreciate you touching on it, because this is one of those things where I'll start by saying I'm going to be voting for this in the committee today. But I think that reading through the RIA, our racial equity analysis, first off, a thank you to Dr. McClure and his team for putting together what I think is an incredibly thoughtful analysis, as well as it shows us, frankly, that like two things can be true at the same time. That it does find that it has the potential to advance racial equity. And within the RIA, it also, though, talks about the nature of a process that can perpetuate segregated school systems. And so I think that for anybody who hasn't had a chance to read it, I think I really encourage folks to do so, because it's a really thoughtful and deep type of analysis that really talks about the struggles that we have here. And I know, our Ward 8 colleague, Councilmember White, and the mayor worked hard to figure out a compromise and put that together. And so I'm grateful for that work. And I may be more just kind of thinking out loud, but part of what I think it highlights as I read through that analysis is that we have to have a lot more thought and process that goes into our site selections for when we are placing our charter schools. And I think that's something that jumped out to me is, I know we've had these conversations before. I don't pretend to know exactly what the answer is, but in which way helping with that site selection on the front end. I think too often it kind of is, the school site selection comes in on the back end of the overall decision. And then community is not really a huge part of that conversation at that point. I've heard some people suggest things like, do you follow more of a, like when we talk about healthcare and you create a certificate of need process to help think through where the physical and geographic locations of different spots are. I don't know if that's the right answer or not. I've heard some people suggest that, but I just think it helps highlight within this broader conversation, more thought that we need to make in that space. So again, to me, this is one of those things that by having a RIA be required really prompts deeper thought. And, and to you, Mr. McDuffie, helping create that office in the first place helps make sure that analysis is being done, that those types of questions are being wrestled with. And it helps us, again, at the end of the day, hopefully make more informed decisions and more transparent decisions to be thoughtful about that. So just want to highlight that again. I'll support this today in committee, but I think it was a really thoughtful and deep analysis that was conducted. I encourage folks to read that, and it prompts more questions that we need to work with. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I move the draft committee report in print with leave for staff to make technical and conforming changes. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it unanimously and the measure is approved. There being no further business before the committee, the time is now 10:50 a.m. and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you.
Bye.